Do you take Mr. Joseph to be your lovely wedding husband?
Yes, I do.
The village church was the heart of the community, a place where the faithful gathered to worship, seek counsel, and share in one another's burdens. Among them was a young woman whose name was spoken with admiration and reverence, Rebecca. She stood at the front of the choir, her eyes closed in deep worship, her voice soaring like a nightingale's call. Every note she sang carried a weight of sincerity, and the congregation often found themselves moved to tears. She sings like an angel, the villagers would say. But Rebecca was more than just a singer. She was a woman of great faith, one who did not just attend church, but lived in the presence of God. She prayed earnestly, fasted regularly, and devoted her time to serving the needy. And yet, in the midst of her devotion, there was one matter that often found its way into whispered conversations. Why is Rebecca not married yet? Rebecca was no stranger to proposals. Many suitors had come forward, wealthy traders, respected landowners, and even a young pastor who had just returned from the city. "Rebecca, my daughter," her mother would urge, "you are not getting any younger. At least consider one of them." But Rebecca had only one response. "Mother, I will marry the man whom God chooses for me." Her friends, too, could not understand. "You rejected a man with cattle and land, a man with gold and a good name? What exactly are you looking for?" one of them questioned. "Not what I am looking for," Rebecca replied, "but what God has planned." And so she remained patient, praying every night for divine direction. That night, she had a dream. She was standing in the middle of an open field, a bright light surrounding her. And then she heard a voice, deep, powerful, yet filled with love. "My daughter, your husband awaits you. He is the one the world calls mad." Rebecca gasped, turning in the dream to see a shadowy figure, a man clothed in rags, sitting by the roadside. She woke up in a panic, her chest rising and falling rapidly. "What kind of dream is this?" she muttered, wiping the sweat from her forehead. She fell to her knees and prayed, rebuking what she thought was a trick of the enemy. But deep in her spirit, a strange unease settled in. What if this was not just a dream? Rebecca walked alone, her Bible clutched to her chest. As she reached a narrow footpath leading home, something caught her attention. By the side of the road, near the village dump site, sat a man. His hair was wild, matted with dirt. His clothes, if they could still be called that, hung from his thin frame in tatters. His skin was covered in dust, his bare feet cracked from walking on rough ground. He muttered to himself, occasionally laughing, a hollow, broken sound that sent chills down Rebecca's spine. But it was his eyes that stopped her in her tracks. Despite the madness, despite the filth, there was something in them, something distant, buried, but unmistakably human. Her heart pounded. Could this be the man God spoke about? She took a step forward, and another. But then the whispers began. Villagers passing by nudged one another, some snickering, others shaking their heads. "Look at her!" The mighty choir leader staring at a madman. Maybe she pities him? Or maybe she is losing her senses too. Rebecca felt their eyes on her, the weight of their judgment pressing down like a heavy stone. She quickly turned away and hurried home, her heart a storm of confusion. The dream came again. Go to him, show him love, and again, go to him, show him love. This time she did not wake up in panic. She woke up in tears. "Why, God? Why must I do this?" she whispered into the darkness. But the answer did not change. She had prayed for God's choice, and now she had it. She had made her decision. With slow, hesitant steps, she approached the madman. He turned his head and looked at her, his lips curled into a crooked smile. "What do you want, woman of the church?" he rasped, his voice hoarse from years of shouting at nothing. Rebecca swallowed hard. "I want to talk to you." And with those words, her journey of faith truly began. Rebecca stood a few feet away, her heart hammering in her chest. This was madness. Her hands tightened around the small food container she had brought. She had barely slept the night before, tormented by thoughts of what the villagers would say if they saw her here. But she had made a choice. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward. The madman, Joseph, was seated on a torn piece of cloth, drawing invisible patterns in the dirt with his fingers. His matted hair covered most of his face, but his lips were moving, whispering words. Rebecca couldn't understand. "Good morning," she said softly. Joseph stopped, his fingers stilled in the dirt, his head tilting slightly. Then he turned to look at her. His eyes were sharper than before, as if some part of him had been waiting for this moment. "Good morning, woman of the church," he rasped, a smirk tugging at his cracked lips. Rebecca swallowed. She had expected him to ignore her, or perhaps chase her away. Instead, he seemed amused. "I brought food," she said, holding out the container. Joseph's gaze flickered to it. His expression darkened. "Poison?" he muttered, suspicion lacing his voice. "No," Rebecca said quickly, "just food." There was a long silence. Then, without warning, Joseph let out a low chuckle. It was not the wild, erratic laughter of madness, but something different, something knowing. "They say you are wise, Rebecca," he said, his voice softer now. "Yet you bring food to a man who sleeps among trash. Do you think you can save me?" His words sent a shiver down her spine. How did he know her name? She took a step closer. "Not I," she said, "but God can." Joseph stared at her for a long time. Then, with slow, deliberate movements, he reached for the food and began to eat. It was the first meal he had accepted from another human in years. Each time, she brought food. Each time, Joseph ate without complaint. But their conversations remained brief. "Why do you keep coming?" he asked one day, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. "Because I was sent to you," Rebecca replied simply. Joseph scoffed. "Then your God is a fool." Rebecca did not react to the insult. She only smiled as if she had expected it. "God's wisdom is beyond human understanding," she said. Joseph's smirk faltered. That night, as he lay among the filth, he found himself thinking of her words. "Have you heard? Rebecca has been seen with the madman." "It cannot be. The choir leader?" "I swear upon my ancestors, I saw it with my own eyes." By the end of the week, everyone knew. Her friends were the first to confront her. "Rebecca, tell us it is not true," they pleaded. "Tell us you are not throwing your life away for a lunatic." Rebecca did not deny it. "I am only obeying God," she said. And with that, the insults began. Whispers filled the air. "She has lost her mind." "What an embarrassment to our faith." Even the pastor struggled to ignore it. When the service ended, a group of elders approached Rebecca outside the church. "You are bringing shame to this house of God," one of them said. "If you do not stop this foolishness, we will have no choice but to remove you from the choir." Rebecca lifted her chin. "If obeying God costs me my place in the choir, then so be it." Gasps of shock followed her words, but she did not flinch. She turned and walked away, leaving them in stunned silence.